Hello, this is Dr. Marty Harris. Current Practices Ensuring Progress and Benefit is the title of this four-part series. The purpose of special education services is to ensure student progress and to ensure that the student benefits from his or her FAPE, free and appropriate public education. We will look at how special education services are delivered by examining the system and the principles behind the system. We will look at the continuum of services, spend a long time on the process of special education, and conclude with ensuring progress and benefit. Specifically, this presentation will focus on the continuum of services and the basic concept of least restrictive environment. As we look at the triangular model of the continuum of services, it becomes apparent that current special education practices include a variety of options. If you will remember our history lesson, you will remember that special education used to be just one room down at the end of the hallway. You will remember that once placed there, you were there to stay. But with the continuum of services, we understand the different types of services, starting from the bottom of the triangle. Residential institution, special school, special class, resource room, itinerant teacher, regular classroom with a special educator consultant. Let's go through these. We still have residential institutions. These facilities may be used for students with severe emotional disorders or other types of disabilities. For example, the Arizona School for the Deaf and/or Blind in Tucson is a wonderful special school where students come from all over Arizona to get their education. Special education classrooms can be found at any school. It is usually for students with moderate to severe disabilities, such as IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities, which we used to call mental retardation, or autism, or multiple disabilities. Sometimes small school districts will band together and form a special education cooperative. Then all the small schools bus their students with moderate to severe disabilities to the one location. Resource rooms can be found in almost every school at every level. Resource rooms provide flexible special education services to students with mild to moderate disabilities. For example, a student with a learning disability may attend a resource room just for help with reading or just for math for part of the day. It depends upon what the student's IEP goals and objectives are. The amount of time in the resource room is also determined by the IEP team. Itinerant teachers travel from school to school to provide special services to students. For example, I worked with an itinerant bilingual learning disability expert. She came to my resource room to give me ideas about working with a bilingual student who had a significant learning disability. For the regular classroom and special educator consultant, the student is in the general education classroom and the special educator consultant provides support to the teacher, or may actually step into the class and help that particular student during part of the day, and maybe help other students as well. Now that you understand the different types of services represented in the continuum of services, let's think about what other information this model provides. Across the top of the triangle, the double arrow indicates the number of students. So we have the fewest number of students in residential institutions and the greatest number of students receiving special education services in the general classroom. The double arrow on the right side represents the degree of exceptionality. As you can tell, we have the fewest number of students at the severe degree and the greatest number of students at the mild degree. All disabilities can be described as mild, moderate, or severe. A few disabilities are described as profound, such as profoundly deaf. The double arrow on the left side represents the least restrictive environment. The general education classroom with special education consultation is considered to be the least restrictive. In other words, the most similar to what peers without disabilities have as their educational setting. As we move down the triangle, the most restrictive environment is the residential institution. It is the farthest away from a typical educational setting. Although we have just discussed LRE in terms of environmental setting, it is important to remember that as the setting is changed, the curriculum may be more modified and the teaching methodology may also be different. Now think about the LRE in relationship to the number of students and in relationship to the degree of exceptionality. It also follows that the majority of students with disabilities have a mild degree of disability and are able to function and learn in the general education classroom with special education support. It follows that a few students with severe disabilities require more intensive services in the special school or in the residential institutions. Remember, most of the students with disabilities are at the top end of our triangle. Finally, in regard to LRE and students with severe disabilities, it is important to note that if such a student were placed in the general education classroom with a special educator consultation, that could be considered a restrictive environment for the student because that environment did not truly meet the needs of that. At the time the continuum of services was developed in the 1970s, we still had students with disabilities all placed in one special education classroom, no matter the degree of disabilities. So offering different options of services was a major improvement. However, over the years, we have discovered we still had a tendency to use the continuum as a staircase approach. A student had to move from one step to the next or just stay on the same step. It was a combination of Nickleby and IDEA 2004 that have led us to a different paradigm, a different way of thinking about the continuum. Now schools are focusing on the goals and the outcomes. That's a major change. The goals and the outcomes for each student and offering an array of services. It's a new paradigm and a new way to ensure that education will be special. Thanks for listening.